said, of course, no problem. Everybody has some questions about Live 911, so just to share my experience. Just to let you guys know, I don't have stock in the company. I'm not their salesperson. I have no investment in it other than it was kind of forced upon us. And we said, no, thank you. And they said, we're doing it anyway. And so we just rolled with it. And we've had some interesting and awesome experiences. So I wanted to share those with you guys. I'm going to start sharing my PowerPoint. I don't believe I'll see the chat. So if you want to jump in at any time, you're more than welcome to. Hopefully you guys can see it. Can anybody see it? The PowerPoint? Are we good?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it.
Thank you. Okay, so this is my favorite line. Every second counts and every detail counts. Super important. So a little bit about our city. We're located in San Diego, California. We're the second largest city in the county of San Diego. Our population is about 270,000. We're 52 square miles, and we have 270 sworn officers. We receive approximately 100,000 911 calls per year. For dispatch, though, we have one manager, and we are slotted for 33 dispatchers. 5 of those, oops, sorry about that, are supervisors that count towards our minimums. Our minimums on day shift are 6, trying to currently move it to 7, 5 on swing shift, trying to move that to 6, and 4 on graveyard. So they're taking 25,000 to 30,000 phone calls a month. The slow hours, we're getting about 15 calls an hour, maybe on graveyard between 3 and 5 a.m., 4 and 6 a.m. During the day and swing shift, they'll take anywhere from 45 to 130 calls an hour. So it's pretty busy for our call takers. So why embrace technology innovation? So they decided it when we said, no, thank you. They decided we have to come up with ideas that are going to help us offset our busy city with not a lot of money for adding personnel. We're one of the lowest officer per capita statewide and nationally. There's obviously not an endless fund to get more officers out in the field. And we had not met our priority response times in over a decade, and priority 2s, and just the cost of it. So they decided that they would try to use technology to try to offset that. So as you know, or maybe you don't know, we have a drone program. So our drones able to respond with the officers, check calls, see things, give updates. And when they rolled out Live 911, they actually rolled it out to, excuse me, our drone operator first. And he was able to listen to the calls downstairs here at the PD and respond based on what he was hearing. So he used it first for us. How it came about, it was a vision from our captain, that's a retired captain now, Fritz Reber, back in 2016. He was the comm center manager. He was a lieutenant at that time, and he went to command college. When he was in command college, they had to do a futures project. Command college is an 18-month course, and it's through Post. And the futures project that he did was introducing the concept of Live 911. Wouldn't it be cool if we could send the officers the calls so that they could hear them in the field? Because the incident of Tamir Rice was very recent. Tamir Rice was, for those of you that don't know, he was a 12-year-old that was playing at a park, and somebody called in and said that there's a guy here with a pistol. He's pointing it at everybody. He's probably a juvenile, and added that the gun was probably fake. And when the officers arrived, Tamir Rice was shot and killed. This is by no means second guessing the dispatchers or second guessing the officers that responded, but Captain Reber just started thinking, like, I wonder if he heard the caller's tone of voice, or if he had heard that it was probably fake. Would he have responded differently? I don't know, maybe not, but he came up with this idea. He reached out to a company called Higher Ground. Higher Ground is a logger company. This is a little bit of information about Higher Ground. and they do capture 911 and live 911. They said, we think we can do this, so let's give it a shot. And they created this software right here, Live 911. They reached out to Chula Vista PD and asked us to pilot it. And so we piloted it for about 9 months with our drone operator, IT working on it. And they reached out to dispatch and asked, could you log in and see? And they would get feedback from us on what was working, what they could do to enhance it. And now they've been able to deploy this at other agencies as well. So closing the gap, I think most people know that our officers already want it. They can hear the 911 calls in real time. So there's not that delay when the suspect leaves and the dispatchers working multiple hot incidents isn't able to get back into that particular one of the drunk driver that's leaving or the suspect that fled and is passing by them the other direction. They can just listen to it. There's actually, I know that Clovis PD has live 911. They released a video on an officer involved shooting recently, and you can hear the 911 call playing in the background for the officer. So when he approached the suspect in the parking lot armed with a rifle, he was getting constant updates live time, and the dispatcher didn't have to type it in, enter it, they read it, and then they air it to the officer. They were just hearing what the citizen was saying that was watching the man. So that was kind of interesting to see. The call location is immediately identified, so the officers get a pin drop on their screen that shows where their caller is. It's integrated with Rapid SOS, so they can see where in the parking lot, where in the building, where in the bushes. They can see where their RP is. And they hear every single detail. So, as dispatchers, we're trying to get it all so fast that our keyboards are on fire because we don't want to miss it as fast as they're giving it to us. But they can hear everything that they're saying. So if we don't type something, or if the primary dispatcher does not air something, they've already heard it. They can hear the tone of voice and the sense of urgency or lack thereof. There's times, obviously, when we think that the caller might not be telling the truth or sound suspicious. And it's always kind of a tricky way to air that over the radio, so at least they can hear that. It enhances their response plan. So the officers, they can adjust their approach based on their training and kind of change it up based on what they've been trained on. So we don't have to try to tell them, and it's current and it's accurate. It's improved our response times. I know a lot of people have asked for data and specifics, but it's been well over a decade that we have not been able to reach our priority 1 response times, and now we're meeting and beating our priority 1 response times. They're still working on ways to pull the data to find out, is it because of live 911? Is it because of the drone? We're not exactly sure. It's only been implemented since May, but it's a shock that it's happened because we didn't hire any more officers and we didn't decrease our call volume by any means. If anything, we've increased. So maybe not. But I know for certain that our officers are getting to certain calls faster because they're hearing it and they're responding before we even put a call for service in. And we'll talk about that later, because that does not sound ideal, but it actually has been working. And then the increased information, providing better de-escalation skills, huge. So the officers can hear the movement of the suspect with real-time updates. So we're noticing that they're actually catching the bad guy a little bit faster without there being that miscommunication or inability to hear. We'll pend 40 to 60 calls waiting to be dispatched. They'll have 40 officers active on the screen working different incidents, and it's impossible to constantly air every single update on every single hot call. So kind of rely in the past on, we'll read your MDC. Hopefully you can hit a priority comment button and it'll notify them you have a priority comment. But now that they can hear the callers, that helps as well. And then the Rapid SOS. So this is what the software looks like, and I'll show you the actual software in a little bit. But over here you have 1 map, 2 maps, and then the address is displayed up here. So it's Right here, it comes in a zoomed out map and it shows you the Rapid SOS. There's a Rapid SOS button that they can click on that will link them. Over on the left-hand side, you have a banner that tells you the address, and this is what the officers are seeing as well as us because we asked to log in as well. It tells you the beat and the area of the call that's coming in. And then your caller, where exactly your caller is. If they move, this map will update as well to show movement. And I did forget to mention the map on the right-hand side will show the caller and the officers and whether or not the officers are listening. So if there's a call nearby and they're not listening, you could ask them to listen. They can set up geofences. They can set up multiple geofences. So the officers can put in like a quarter mile or half mile around them so that if they leave their beat or their area, that they'll still get the calls. They can also listen to, we have sectors. So in like sector 1, you have 4 beats, 11, 12, 13, 14. They can choose to listen to beat 11 and a quarter mile around them. So if they leave 11 and go somewhere else, they can have both. Or they can monitor 11, 12, 13, 14 because it's all in their sector. Or they can do them all. It just depends. So the multiple geofences, once they log on to this app, it doesn't cover their MDC, but they'll be able to get a little notification that will pop up that'll say there's a live 911 call. They can dismiss it, they can listen to it. If they're muted, they're not going to hear them. If they drive around muted, then the calls won't bother them. So if they don't want to hear it, they don't have to. Our policy right now is that we don't require them to listen to it. Most of them, however, do because they've seen the benefit of it. Or they can click on it, see where their caller is, and just listen. They can also listen without clicking on it, just as long as it's unmuted. We can see who's listening and who's not listening as well. So this right here to me, you guys have all been receiving the multiple emails in our inboxes saying that we need to do things a little bit better. And this article right here stood out to me a lot because it talked about the Harvard professor, Henry Louis Gates Jr., who was arrested by the sergeant for breaking into his own home. It was aired as respond to 17 Ware Street for a B&E in progress or breaking and entering. 2 suspects barged their way into the home and they have suitcases. If you listen to the audio, the caller was stating he may have forgot his key. He may live there. It just seems suspicious. And they said, is he breaking in? And she said, I don't know. I'm not sure if he forgot his key or not. But the way that it's aired, and I'm not saying that the dispatchers did anything wrong here at all, because you don't want to have your officers under respond and you don't want to have them over respond, because the studies have shown, and you've seen the articles, that they will make decisions based on what we tell them. And this was just an example that I wanted to show out. It's a lot of pressure, I think, on the dispatchers to, air the information correctly and, not leave something out or put something in that wasn't actually said, but, we're all doing our best. So right here was showing that he was arrested. And then he ended up being invited to the White House, both of them, the sergeant and him, to have a beer with the president to talk about police reform. Some of the things that we've seen is law enforcement reform starts with 911 reform. So I thought this article was super important. The good part, how it affects us in the dispatch center, because that's what we really want to know. It is a different way of dispatching. We're working together in ways that we haven't before, where we're hearing things from the other side of the radio. We're hearing officers go out on a call. It's only life-threatening calls where they'll go out and they'll say, show me en route to the overdose or the drowning. Our officers carry Narcan. So when they hear an overdose come in, they will say on the radio, I'm en route to the E Street trolley or whatever on the overdose live 911. So we did not have a plan in place for that. My bad on that one. So that was a big takeaway for us. That was our hiccup that we had, that I wish we could have done it better. Have a plan in place So our plan became, instead of people yelling in the room, what's the officer talking about? What is he going to? I don't know what he's responding to. I have the call, I'm routing it. It was chaos, honestly. But we put a plan in place that the dispatcher on primary will now go ahead and enter a self-initiated activity for the officer, just like you do when they tell you they're going out on traffic. Once the dispatcher routes the call, our CAD will tell you there's a duplicate call. So if you're putting in a call for East Street Trolley and you try to route it and the officer is already on the self-initiated responding, you can append all the information to that duplicate call, or you can associate the two calls later. But that way on primary, the primary dispatcher is updating what's happening, and the call taker is also updating what the RP is saying. So you have documentation of both, and we put them together. So that was different hearing it come in that way. But the immediate information sharing for the life-threatening calls, I've seen it happen on the drowning call that you guys may have you've heard me talk about it, where the lady did not have the address. She was just screaming that her baby had drowned. And yes, it becomes a little chaotic in dispatch when that's happening, but who doesn't want the officer to respond immediately to their baby, their family member's baby, anybody's baby, and just get there faster? So yeah, that's a problem for dispatch, or it was until we put a process in place. So if you have that process to start, it's going to be beneficial. They're not doing it all the time. They're not doing it on, non-priority calls, and the dispatchers route them pretty quick anyway. We already talked about that. Every second counts and every detail counts. And it's also been shown to reduce personal and department liability. So as you guys know, dispatchers can be held personally liable for the mistakes that they make, and the department can be sued as well. So that's huge for me, because my dispatchers, when they make a mistake, we can immediately correct them. The officers might jump on the radio and say, can you confirm the location or the business name? I copied something different. And yeah, it's a little something you don't want to hear, but we'd rather them go to the 211 occurring now with a person with a gun to the right address than the robbery that's occurring that was accidentally by mistake put in at a different location. Those are rare, but it has happened, but it really saves the dispatcher and the department on those. Talked a little bit about this. So the officers have been very polite on the radio now that they hear how the dispatchers are being talked to by the citizens. But they will come up and they'll air information for us. The drone was the first one to start doing it, and he'll say, I copied the vehicles leaving, and then the dispatcher is like, great, thanks, haven't even read it. So just being able to hear information from the other side is new. And then we had a senior volunteer patrol that was out at the mall, and he was being screamed at by a citizen, and somebody called in, somebody's yelling at your officer. It's one of the senior volunteers. Tried him on the radio, no answer. The drone launched, and the caller, they were asking, where at the mall are they? Because it's big. And the caller said, by Starbucks. And the drone operator came up and said, I copied by Starbucks. So that's how fast it comes in. It's put out over the radio instead of the call taker typing it, entering it, the dispatcher reading it when she's working multiple calls. Happens when we enter incorrect locations, but there's immediate clarification and correction available. And then I call them training opportunities, because I think 99.9% of the time, or even 99, the dispatchers are doing the right thing the best they can, and they're doing everything that they can. That's the whole reason they took the job. So when there is a mistake that's made, and something that Kim Turner has probably taught some of you and taught me, there are training opportunities. So it's just a way to learn and reach out to that dispatcher and find out, do you need help with the rapid deploy or the live 911, or, entering the address and selecting the right one, or maybe geography is an issue for them, or whatever it is. We can immediately tell what we need to circle back with the dispatchers. Reducing dispatcher stress. So when we first were told we were getting this, everyone's stress went up, including mine. because I thought, oh my gosh, we don't have a quality assurance program in place. This is not going to be good. Probably some of the things that you guys have thought about. But it's actually brought down their stress level, because previously, the officers would blame dispatchers, secretly or not secretly, and they would say, you know, why aren't they asking these questions? Like, I'm driving there and hello, and they would jump on the radio. Can you ask what color the car? Can you ask it this? Can you ask that? And they think that maybe we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, and they get frustrated with us. Well, now they hear it, and they're hearing it real time. So they're thinking, okay, it's not the dispatcher, it's the caller. So now they see that. Our stress level, when we try to get the information in as quick as we possibly can, now you know they're hearing it. So you're like, okay, yeah, sir, slow down, but you know that the officer's getting it really fast. The guy's leaving, so you'd hear dispatcher in the room. He's now got a gun, he's leaving, or whatever. The officers are hearing it. So it brings you down just a little bit. The primary dispatcher has a lot of pressure to run multiple hot calls at the same time, read them and air them. And it reduces their pressure as well, because the officers are, again, hearing it. So that helps a lot. Also, it reduces the stress because you don't have to worry about the synopsis of a synopsis. You don't have to worry as much, I should say, about, you know, did the person forget their key? Are they breaking into the house? Like, what is actually happening? And trying to question that. Are they breaking in? You're trying to really get the caller to narrow down what is happening. And if I omit something, then what is that going to mean for my officers that respond? But if I type it in this way, what is that going to mean for my officers that respond? So they hear it all, which is fantastic. It's enhancing our transparency and confidence. So I kind of look at Live 911 as when they rolled out the BWCs for the officers, and the officers were like, and no. Kind of how we were, where we're like, okay, now everyone's hearing what I'm doing. We knew before there was always that possibility that, you know, you could end up on national news, so be careful, or you hear back a recording, you're told to testify in court, and you're like, geez, I sounded like I needed a break that day. So now it's out there. I've had my supervisor tell me that she noticed that she'll check herself and say, I have to be a little bit nicer because I know everyone's listening to me. So there's that. It is a lot of transparency, but dispatchers are doing the right thing. They're doing the right thing. So there's no worry that people are going to hear you, because if anything, the officers appreciate it more, and they have more confidence in us, instead of saying, you know, the dispatchers are ridiculous, they're not getting what we need. Their confidence has gone up, and you guys are professional. I can't believe the way people talk to you, and you are asking all the questions that we're wanting you to ask. So it's been a really beautiful thing to bridge that gap. And then you've seen the studies where dispatchers' actions and inactions do play a role in the police response and the action they take once they get on scene. Our officers right now, even more so than ever, are under the microscope on why they did what they did. This protects us, as far as they did what they did based on the information they received from dispatch or from the 911 caller or whatever. Kind of takes us a little bit out of the loop on that one if they're hearing it and they're making their decisions based on that, because I never want to be the one that's responsible or feels responsible, even though it's not my responsibility, that something were to happen that maybe was based on how I aired a call, because I forgot to say that they thought the gun looked like a cell phone. That study is out there as well, that the officer is 10 times more likely to shoot if the dispatcher airs the person has a gun, but it looks like a cell phone, or leaves the part out about it looks like a cell phone. And then the questions from the officers over the radio have been reduced, which was a blessing. Like I said, they were constantly asking, ask them this, ask them that. Well, they don't do that anymore, because they know that we're asking and they can hear it. They know that our caller is just cooperative or is hung up on us or whatever the case may be. When we ask for it, those maps that they put in are amazing. The one on the left shows us GIS information. So we can click on a building, and the building, it'll tell us who the owner is and what the phone number is. And then the residential information, we can click on a button and it'll take us to First Two. So it's great. It shows you who's associated with the residents. And that's when we started thinking like, okay, we want logins and we want to be able to have this at our workstation because we like that it shows us where the caller is and in relation to the officers and all the business and residential information. They automatically populate with the Rapid SOS. We just talked about that, and the multiple success stories. So I see articles all the time, and I recently took a quality assurance class about Denise Amber Lee, and I thought, wow, I wonder if they had Live 911, would that have saved her life? Because yeah, the dispatcher didn't put a call when Denise called in, but the officers would have heard that in the field and been able, and he drove right by officers as people were updating where he was. So there's things like that that you see, or I see on national news that I think, geez, if we would have Live 911 on that incident or that incident or that incident, it may have made a difference. And the success stories that we're seeing is on the daily in here, where we're like, wow, you know, they caught that guy because they heard it so quickly, or, you know, they were able to hear that the caller that was saying there was a guy at the door with a gun, breaking it down, didn't really have a gun. And so their approach was different. And they came up on the radio and told us, keep them landline, we're listening to Live 911. So it was aired by the primary dispatcher's man at the door with the gun, trying to break down the door and get in. But really that's not the situation that the caller was actually saying. But she's only got a few seconds on the radio to air what she needs to air. But when they hear it all, it's just been super helpful. Domestic violence calls, all of that. We're like, it's really helping the officers and us. Our dispatch supervisors are playing it in the background. They unmute. They can listen to every 911 call that's coming in the room. Just in the background, like they listen to mutual aid channels, so it plays. So if they hear something and a dispatcher struggling on a certain part, they're able to jump in. Prior to that with Vista, they would have to click on and join or monitor the individual call, and it would play in their headset. But now it's just kind of background noise they keep down low. Immediate quality assurance. This is really just my words. It's obviously not a quality assurance program by any means. And maybe it's a bad choice of words on my part, but for us, it's giving us the immediate feedback that we need. So we don't have to go back a week or two later and then hear something and like, uh-oh, like let's retrain them on that. It's coming up as it's happening, which has been great. We absolutely need a quality assurance program. And when they rolled out the Live 911, I said, can we hold off until I get a QA program in place? And I was told no. So that's okay, because it's just giving us like constant feedback and constant information, which is great. But that will be something that I end up adding as soon as possible. And then discipline is progressive. We talked about the training opportunities that we have, and we've only had one incident that we are investigating regarding possible discipline as a result of Live 911, but you know, it's just something that I'd rather know now than look back and a PRA was received and find out, oh gosh, or see it on the news and think, oh my goodness. So we were able to catch it. So appreciate Live 911 about that, but it's been, you know, a year and 5 months, and it's the first time it's happened. So it's not something that happens a lot, but it happened. And then we enhance our response to and service to our community. I think that is honestly my biggest takeaway, other than yes, our officers are safer as well, but our community, they're getting, the officers are responding in a way that's best for them because they have all the information and they have it really quickly. They're getting, you know, they're saving lives. They're going to drownings, to overdose, to non-breathers. And they're getting there so fast that it's incredible. And then our community is asking us to do things differently. They're telling our officers to do things differently, and they want something more from us. And I believe that Live 911 is giving that to them because they're getting a better response, and it's also protecting our officers in the same sense that they get to hear it all. FAQs, is it live? So it varies, but we have right now a 4-second delay. So it's as live as it can be. And the officers can jump in when they want to. So if they notice that there's a hot call that came in, but they were muted or they were not listening, and now they're going to be covering somebody, if they jump in 30 seconds late, it's going to start playing from the beginning, and they can have the option to fast forward. That was a choice that they made, and if you want your agency set up differently, they may or may not be able to make that accommodation, but we didn't want them to miss everything in the very beginning. So they can catch up if they want to, but it will start from the beginning. And then what to do when officers go before the call is entered. That was our biggest issue that we had. So if you are going to implement it, just because your dispatchers may be a little bit stressed, they don't want to be hearing everything from the other side. The officers should know that they can't do that all the time, but in the rare instance when it does happen, that the dispatcher knows how to handle it and what to do with the duplicate call. And you may have a better process that you come up with, but that's just what's working for us. IT questions, I'm going to be honest, I am not the one. Anybody that knows me knows that. And there are definitely many unique interfaces and things that you'll want to do at your agency that you need to ask questions about, but probably not going to be the person for you to ask. But essentially what they did for us is it's basically like a logger where they came into our server room, put down another server, call comes in to our phone server, the 911 call goes to dispatch, and then it also goes over and splits and goes to that second server, which then goes to the officer. So it's a second piece of hardware that you're going to have in your server room. Other than that, I'm not the one. It is not integrated with our CAD right now. And then I recommend reaching out to Higher Ground to discuss any particulars that you have and what you're looking for. And I have questions or time for questions, right? Oh, good. I trimmed it way down. Okay. So we can open it up for questions. Let's see. I don't see an option to see the chats.
Are you able to view the chatter now?
Let's see. Okay, I see. What do the officers use to listen to the audio on their laptop? It plays out of their MDC, just like when the officers, I don't know if your guys' officers have the MDCs that reads them, you have an update on your call, you have arrived yourself, or whatever that little voice that they have, or giving them directions. Same thing, it plays out of that. They can also log into their smartphone, and they can listen to it on their smartphone if they want, and it will play for them. Yes, they are assigned phones. They have smartphones that they can run CAD or anything like that. They want to do Live 911 on their cell phone, they can do that as well. The cost of the program, I hear that it's very, very minimal. Don't want to announce a price that you guys are going to go to Higher Ground and ask them to honor it, but it's something ridiculous, like $50 a license or user. So we have, like, if you have 15 officers, or 10 officers, you're gonna pay $500 a month or $6,000 a year. They don't charge you per, I know this, they don't charge you per officer. So they're not saying you have 270 officers, you need 270 license. It's how many are going to be actively listening at the time. And they also do account for the overlap. So if you have 15 on day watch and 15 on swing watch, they don't say you need 30, you need 15, because they account for that little bit of overlap between the shifts. So it's really cheap, only because I've looked into, like a training program, and it was 20 grand. So I was shocked that it was as low as it was, but they're doing it for the right reasons, and they just want the officers to have the information. So the price is not bad. It's a lot cheaper than I know what my my lawsuits would have been if it hadn't saved our bacon. Does the audio come out of the car speakers? I don't think so. It comes out of the MDC that they're using or their phone. How will this work in the new 911 call routing? I'm not sure, but if you reach out to Higher Ground or Live 911, they'll be able to answer. So I'm sorry if I say I don't know to some of the questions. It's just that I'm just not that familiar with the product as far as like, you know, sales and knowing the ins and outs of it. It's just more my experience of an end user and how we do it. Are there problems with officers joining mid-call or listening to 911 calls in the same area, but unrelated to the event they are on, causing confusion? No, they turn it off if they just mute it if they don't want to hear it. And if they're on an incident, they're probably outside their vehicle, so they're not hearing it on their MDC anyway. And they, like I said, have the option to mute it. It's interesting though, if you watch the Clovis PD OIS that happened in the parking lot with the suspect, you can hear it playing for the officer. And then, so we don't require, you asked how they mitigate the issues. We don't require our officers listen to it. We strongly encourage them to log in because they know that we can see their relation in order to that. But if you log in, you don't want to hear it, just mute it. That's fine. Most of them like to listen to it, but they're not forced to do it. So if they want to hear it, they hear it. If they don't, they mute it. Or they don't log on, even though we strongly encourage them to log on. So it's really going to be up to the individual officer whether or not that they're going to be able to manage hearing both at the same time. No, they're not required. Do the officers jump on the radio with questions if they think one should be asked before the call taker gets to it? They do, but it's so, like, our questions, it's so rare. I mean, they were doing that before Live 911, you know, ask them this, ask them that, and you're like, I already am. So now they're not really jumping in and asking us, but if they do, it's just no different than before. Like if they want something and they realize that they need that first and we're asking other things, then maybe we need to ask that first. You know, are they still on scene? And maybe the dispatcher got nervous and forgot to ask that. So yeah, we've always taken questions from the other side. It's not increased by any means, it's decreased. So that's good. Do officers ever pre-broadcast? Yes. Yes, yes, and yes, it causes confusion. And yes, they do air information, but, or I should say it caused confusion. So once we started really getting into a rhythm of if the officer is going to air information and there's not a call for service entered, the primary dispatcher just continues what she's doing, puts in a self-initiated Live 911 of an overdose at such and such. Then we link the calls together later. If he says he's on scene, she updates him on scene, and then we link the calls together. So there's no delay. There's no, and yes, the dispatchers of course are wondering like, what is he going to? What is he talking about? Or what are they talking about? So, but we want our dispatcher to route it, but it's very rare and it's only in life-threatening circumstances. And once the system's in place of you are going to hear it from the other side, this is how you handle it, then they're pretty comfortable at just going through and being like, okay, he's going out on something wild or whatever, and he's got the information or they have the information, and then trying to fill in the blanks later. But such a service to the community that it's worth it. That yeah, it's a little bit uncomfortable at first, but they'll definitely get used to it. Is there an option for non-911 calls to be heard? Yes. So we had that option in place for a while until they started hearing the Watch Commander P line, people calling in sick, people getting in trouble, conversations that maybe all of patrol shouldn't hear. So we decided as an organization to turn that off. So now they can hear 911 calls and they can hear recalls of 911 calls, but they're not hearing our admin calls. But that was a department decision. If you want to make a different decision, it's absolutely doable. Thank you. And I'm correct that the officer is Live 911 on the call to ask the caller directly. Am I correct? No, the officer is not on the call, and he can, or they cannot speak to the caller directly. It's not an option. Yeah, they can't. So no, they can't interrupt, and they can't take over calls. Did they require you to switch to higher ground for your voice logger? No. Are we able? Let me just do that one first. So no, they're not our logger company. We have Barrett, and we're not switching. The only benefit, well, it's a huge benefit, so I shouldn't say only. If they were our logger company, when the officer got on scene, they would be able to play back the previous 911 call if they wanted to. Right now, we don't have the option to do that because they're not our logger company. You have to, once the call is disconnected, it's gone, and they're not able to play it back. So if you have them, that's good. If you get them, that's just an enhanced feature that they can do for you. So I would like to have them, but we'll see where that goes because it's usually a contract. No offense to Barrett, I love Barrett. We did keep it, and if so, do the 911 calls end up recorded on? They're not recorded on Live 911. They're only streamed and then they're gone. So they're not keeping a record or any copies of any of our recordings. They're all stored with Barrett. We do not dispatch medical and fire. And then how is the dissemination of medical info addressed? That is something that we don't do and that I don't feel comfortable speaking on because I don't know how that works. I know that there are some fire agencies that have found a lot of benefit in this. But I just don't know how they're using it. I would honestly reach out to, maybe APCO can find somebody that is a fire comms manager that's using it, or reach out to Live 911. They could put you in touch with somebody that is using it. But I'm not really sure. And then how has let's see, the change of police are getting to their calls sooner. Oh, their calls. So they're getting, we've always done that where we don't go to every medical call. And we still don't. Usually the officers will ignore all the medical calls. We don't even put in calls for service for them. But when it's CPR in progress, life-threatening, things like that, we usually got there first anyway. And fire was going to want us to go. So they were going to stage or whatever the case may be, or they were going to roll an AF-wordy dressed in our vehicle and, quarter mile away, we're going to get there before fire does. So there haven't been really any problems with that, I guess I would say, because we would get there sooner first anyway. Is the app secure to listen to an audio? Yes. I would speak to Live 911 about that, what their security systems are, whatever that they have, so that the public can't scan or anything like that. But yes, they are 100% secure. When you transfer to fire, does the dispatcher need to stay on the line for the officer to get updates? They would if it was a call that the police department needed to go to, but we would stay on the line anyway if the PD needed to go, because we may have questions or hear something unfold. So our protocol prior was, if you transfer a medical call, you're going to stay on the line and listen. Does PD need to respond? And then you're going to stay on the line and let them know we're responding also, and you're going to get all the updates. Person's now breathing, not breathing, CPR in progress. So haven't really changed, but once our dispatcher hangs up the phone, it's done and the officer can't hear it. Or when the citizen hangs up, they can still hear us, but it's over. So they'll hang up and they'll ask us to recall. But yeah, once we disconnect, it's gone. There's no secondary recording and we'd have to call back. I think I'm at the bottom. Did I miss any?
I'll jump in there.
Okay.
Again, great work, Carla. What about some of the negatives? I know we don't really like to talk about them, but what are some of the struggles that you've had with, whether it was implementation or day to day, whether it's on the officer's side or the dispatcher's side, with this new way of doing business?
Okay. I'm gonna put my my contact information back up for you guys in case you guys want to email me or you have any questions, or Live 911. So the negatives, some of the stuff that I had already talked about, like when they wanted to give it to us, we said no thank you. I was nervous because we didn't have a QA program in place. So that was kind of scary. And then just a lot of fears as far as like, are the officers going to hear what we're saying and they're going to question the dispatchers when in reality the exact opposite happened. And then our other negative was um, teaching the dispatchers to when they have it up, so they like it a lot as far as the maps give more information than any other map, but they have to be very careful that once you log on once, it's fine, but they have to put in what position they're sitting at. So Rapid SOS is going to pull if you're at phone position 1, you have to put in on your Live 911, I'm at position 1. If you don't put that you're at position 1, it's going to drop all the 911 calls to you. It's not going to pull just yours. So our dispatchers log in, I'm at position 1, and this is where I'm sitting, and they mute it, and then they just see their caller information. If you don't put that you're position 1, you might get a call for position 1, then it jumps to position 2. And then so when you look over and you're like, oh, my caller is over here at 1100 Broadway. Well, no, you didn't set your position. So then you have to be very careful of like, well, you say you're calling from 500 Broadway, but I'm showing you're at, 1200 Guatai, and you're thinking, why is Rapid SOS wrong? Well, it's not wrong. It's just that you got to make sure you do that. So that was a learning curve for us. There's nothing wrong with the program. It was just more of this was something that dispatch wanted to use, so we had to make sure we were doing it right. And then the other one was the big one was hearing the information from the other side, not necessarily when they gave us updates, because that's fine. They're very, very good at giving us updates. Like, I'm copying the suspects leaving, or when we get a hit and run, we'll tell them like it's on Live 911, and then we're like not so much worried about that non-injury hit and run suspect because we're working, a 211 over here and this and that. So we're like, let us know when you catch up to it, instead of like the constant like keep them landline, follow, and then the dispatcher keeps going back to the deuce driver, the hit and run or whatever, turn by turn. So it's good that they can hear that, and then we can also like not so much disregard it, but it's not as much pressure when you're working multiple hot calls. But hearing it from the other side, so then the officer might tell you like, I'm behind the vehicle now at such and such street. So it's just a different way of doing it where you're going to hear different things from the other side. As long as your officers are polite, ours are very, very polite. So they'll say like, I copied, or can you confirm, or whatever. So they have to get used to hearing that. The officers used to blame us. Now they, not necessarily blame, but they realize that a lot of times it's a caller, not us. But hearing the initial call for service, I think was our biggest hiccup, where the officer tells you, I'm en route to a Live 911 call at the E Street trolley on an overdose. And the dispatchers were like going through the roof. Like, what are you telling me? Where's my call? How are you going? I don't even know what you're working. And it's a lot for them because they're not used to that at all. So if you just really work with them and tell them like, this is how we're going to do it, they may hear it before you hear it, or see it pop up on your screen, or before you've actually read it. But our CAD's great because it'll tell you there's a duplicate call and you can associate. But honestly, I think that was the biggest confusion for dispatch, was hearing that from the other side. Doesn't happen often though. It's only on the ones where like literally somebody is going to die or could die. But we're okay with that confusion that happens for a second until they figure out like what's really going on, as long as that citizen's life gets saved. We don't have them doing that on a verbal DV or whatever. That's yes still a priority too, but they're not doing it all the time. It's rare. And I'm trying to think, was there anything else that I think that was the most what I would consider negative. It was just like our fears and maybe but we were piloting it. So getting ahead of that, the officers saying, I'm en route to this, and you're like, what is happening? So that was bad on my part that I didn't see that coming in advance and set something up for my dispatchers. Anything else? But other than that, I mean, it's fantastic. Like, it's changed how we're doing business. It's helped our officers, it's helped our citizens, It's helping our dispatchers. And yes, all of our stuff's out there and they see, but they're sending us emails and nice letters and phone calls and telling us like, I can't believe what you guys do. And you guys know your dispatchers are doing the right thing 99.9% of the time. So they really honestly don't have to worry that the officer's listening. If anything, they just are more appreciative of our dispatchers. They're like, wow, I thought I knew what you guys did, but I can't believe the words they just called you on 911. Or I can't believe that they called 911 for that. Um, I wish that I would have invited an officer to speak on, like, because the way that the things that they say to us now, it's like before, they might have thought like, oh my gosh, these dispatchers don't know what they're doing. They never give us the information that we need. But now they're like, these people are incredible. Like these callers are not very nice sometimes. um, so it's just changed their minds about how we do business up here.
So you might have mentioned it in your presentation, Carla. Did you speak about how the officers are hearing this versus their radio traffic and how that's filtered as they go from those different zones you talked about with the geofencing, but how their actual radio traffic's filtered from the live 911 information they're hearing?
Yeah, so our officers use the little earpieces in their ears so that the radio traffic's obviously coming in their earpiece. And then their live 911 is going to be playing out of their MDC or their cell phone or however they have it set up. So it's background noise. And the only reason I didn't include video and audio in this is because I was told that when we try to use Zoom for whatever reason, our PD, and you put in a video or audio, that it doesn't work very well. So I didn't include any, but if you watch the Clovis PD OIS, you'll hear it. You'll hear the radio dispatcher talking and you'll hear the live 911 playing in the background. And you'll hear how the information is coming out. It's pretty neat to hear that. Do you think it'd be worth it for me to show the actual live 911?
Yeah, I think you still have 37 people hanging in, so you got a big
Okay.
audience still.
All right, let's show it. Okay, is it up?
Yep.
Okay, so this is what the software looks like on our screen. These are my people that are logged in, my officers. This is your zoomed out map. The red ones are the muted. The white ones are the ones that are available and logged in and ready to listen. Once a 911 call drops, people will start turning green that are listening to it, and that'll be based on their geofence that they have set up. If a call drops here and 223 is muted, and you want him to know getting a 211 occurring now or robbery occurring now, it's near you, it's you can monitor, it's on 911, however you want to choose to say it. That officer then can unmute and listen to it. You can suggest that you can have a sergeant pop in and listen to it if you notice the sergeant's not listening. This here is showing you where my caller is, same pen that we're used to seeing on Rapid SOS or Rapid Deploy. And then if they move, it will travel down the street and continuously update. This here is where I can set my distance. So right now I have it set at 10 miles so that I can get the whole city. On my settings, I can go in and I can say, show the notifications. So when the officers select this, they can have their MDC up in the front, and then the notifications checkbox will allow them to have like a little banner that pops up in the bottom if they want to see that. This is where I can choose my multiple geofences. So if I want to listen to 11, 12, and 13, and I also want, a quarter-mile radius, I can do that. Or if I change my mind, I don't want to listen to that one, and I only want 11 and 12, they can do that. So they can just set their geofences to whatever they want them to be. And so we just got a 911 call, and it shows you where your caller is. I have it muted, but it tells us the address here, the caller ID, and this is exactly what the officers in the field can see, but this is what we have up. They can click on the Rapid SOS. We just got another 911 call. So you notice over here, the officers are starting to turn green. It means that they're listening. Here's your address here, and then it's also there. So now we have 2 calls at 3740 Main Street. So you can assume that whatever they're calling about is either a hot call or it's going to be something that's probably legitimate and something's going on. So the primary dispatcher can monitor those. Got a third 911 call over here. And so this person's close, this officer is listening, this officer is listening. So they can start moving towards it if they want to. It's beneficial. And then you have your caller drop here. So this is a dispatcher for us. This works well. So see how I got all 3 of the 911 calls that came in? That's where I was talking about if you don't set your phone position, they'll just continuously drop and move. So that's where it's important that you set your phone position. So if I'm the dispatcher working the 3740 Main, I want that one to stay on my screen. I don't really mind to know what's happening over here way on the east side of the city. And then if I glance over at my screen, I haven't set my position. I'm like, wait, are you calling from Stanislaus? And they're like, no, I'm on Main Street. So that's super important that they set it. But I think we do that anyway with Rapid Deploy and Rapid SOS, where you're setting your phone position, especially if it's automatically querying. So it's no different than that. While I'm sharing, I cannot see the comment box. So if anybody's having questions, I'm not seeing them. So you could, I don't know, Tim, if you want to tell me if there's any questions popping up or.
Yeah, I was just right there with you. Let me see what our last ones
Okay,
were.
great.
Looks like, do you have, oh, do you have to use AVL in order for the application to function?
I don't believe so. I mean, they're streaming the calls to the officers. The geofence is an option, but if they geofence, like we have our entire city as one geofence. So if they set it for everybody, I don't know. That's a great question. Um, but it's our PSAP. So I'm trying to work it out in my head. If it's our PSAP and they're taking any 911 calls that come into our PSAP and they're sending them out to the officers using the app, how would they know they're part of our PSAP? Maybe because they're users? It doesn't seem like you would have to. They would just hear everything. But yeah, that would definitely be a question for Higher Ground. So it's just the live91.com. Or if you want, you can email me and I can find an answer and send it back to you.
Yeah, and for those of you that are in attendance still, I know Carla is willing to hang out, and we're going to continue this because our next meeting isn't until 1 o'clock. If for those of you that need to go to lunch, we totally understand. But I think Carla, you're willing to hang out for a little bit if there's more
Yeah,
questions. Okay.
definitely. And we can have conversations. It doesn't always have to be on the chat. But yeah. So, but I'll stay for a couple minutes. Are you gonna stay with me? Am I gonna know when it's okay to leave?
I will stay until the
Okay.
bitter end.
Okay, sounds good.
So I know you have a couple other questions rolling in. So it looks like there's one. Oh, you can see them now, right?
Yes. So the AVL, and then do you find the majority of your calls are accurately populate on Rapid SOS? Yes. So yeah, I mean, it's the best technology that we have right now to find our callers. So yeah, I mean, it's no different than Rapid Deploy or, the lat long that we get on the phase 1, phase 2. It's very, very accurate. I've taken a call myself where the lady ran from her house and was down the street hiding in the bushes because her husband was trying to kill her. And we had that blue pen drop right where she was, and she was right on that side of the house. So Rapid SOS it's incredible as far as what they can show you, like where exactly people are calling from. It's not our be all end all go to everything. You still want to get the information from the caller because you don't want to rely on technology for that. If they're going to say they're somewhere else, we'll go with what they're saying. Will officers see locations that are only ALI phase 1 or phase 2 hits? It's Yeah, they'll see them, but because the software separately from us and our comm center is integrated with Rapid SOS, it's always going to pull from Rapid SOS. So whatever Rapid SOS is getting is where it's going to drop the pin for us. So it's not pulling from Vista or a phone system, it's pulling from Rapid SOS. Thanks. Great presentation. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Definitely not a salesperson presenter. This is my second one I've ever done. First one was yesterday. So appreciate you guys going easy on me. I hope that gave all the information that you needed. I'll still stay and answer questions, but you can also email me. And I don't